Hi everybody, Roy from Upsolver. One of the things that I always get from customers and from our users is how do you detect when an upstream system changed the schema of the data? How common is it for upstream data sets to just get new columns, some columns get decommissioned and removed, maybe even change the data type of a column? So as data flows in through your ingestion pipeline, how do you know when these things are happening so you can kind of get ahead of it instead of waiting for that change to get pushed down to your warehouse and then all your models begin to break because the schema is now different. So in this particular example, in this demo, I wanted to show you how we can use Upsolver to detect those changes in near real time and be able to identify them before we push that data downstream. So in this particular example, I'm creating a table in a data lake as you see here in the first step. And then I'm creating a job. And this job is a very simple job that just reads a JSON file that I created in S3 and populate the data. So I already ran it, so we're gonna have to watch that again. But you can see here that there's a table created. There's a few specific columns associated with it. And here's the job that is actually working on that data and populating that table. So now that the data is running, let's go run a quick query. So we're going to run a query against that particular table. And this is just a simple select query to see the data that we have. So very cool. We got the airline column, we got flight numbers, origin. We can see it's a nested field. There's also a timestamp of when that particular event happened. The next thing we wanted to do is I wanted to simply run a query against the information schema that represents the set of tables. So this is just a way for me to see, hey, what is the name of the table? Maybe some comments about it, when it was created, who owned it, and then when it was modified. And this kind of lets me know who is the owner of this table. If I need to go and ask him any questions, I can do that. Now, let's run a query against the columns table in the information schema. And this in particular tells me a few things. It tells me that there's a set of columns, and these are the columns that I created. We see that one of them is called origin.city. It's a nested column, and we have some system columns as well. We also see further down that there is an interesting set of columns called last seen and first seen. And these columns tell me when was the last time and when was the first time that that particular column or the data within that column has changed. So in this case, we see all the columns have the same first and last seen timestamps. So we know the data or the column was introduced and data was populated into that column at the same time, which means these columns existed from the beginning. Now I'm going to switch over to my Amazon console. I'm going to upload another file. And then we're going to have to let this kind of marinate a little bit for a few seconds to kind of get things started. We'll let the system read through it. And basically now what the system is doing, because we put a new file in there, new data, it's parsing that JSON. It's trying to understand it. And what I did to demonstrate this, I just added another column. I changed some of the nested, added a new nested column so we can see those changes in our table. So we're just going to rerun this query here just to see if anything was updated in our table yet. We see nothing has been added yet because this is the origin table that should have changed, or column. Give that a minute. In the meantime, while we kind of wait for this to populate, we can also click on here and we can actually see some additional statistics on that particular table. So again, this is just a sample data, so I don't have a lot of events, but this will tell you all the events that you see in the system. So if there's any dips or drops or spikes in your data, you can tell right away whether something is happening with your data stream or not. You also get a quick little sample of the data for each of the columns. You see what type it is. We see density. Density tells us how many null values are we seeing in that column. So if the column always have real values, we get it 100%. But if you're starting to see null values, that density is going to drop. So it's a good indicator to tell you whether things are happening or not. Top values, if anything changes, if you're starting to see some weird values in here, you can very quickly tell. You can also see here, actually, this just caught this, right? That we actually detected the schema change already. Originally, we had origin city. Now we have origin country, and we also have a terminal. This wasn't there in the beginning. So let's close this up. Let's kind of rerun this query again, and hopefully our data will be populated. Okay, cool. So now we have more values in here. We see that the origin column has changed. We have some values here that has doubled. And then there is the terminal. And you can see here some values are missing because the original data did not have a terminal. So cool. So now we see that actually there's some new data in here, but we want to understand why. What happened? So we're going to run this column query again, the one that queries against the column information schema, and we're going to look at what we got. So now we have a bunch of columns. We see that there's a country, origin.country, and we see there's a terminal. If we move over all these things so we can see better, we have this first scene and last scene, and we can see here on the difference is that this was in 420 1821, and here we see that there's 421 1634, right? So now the first scene of the original column is from yesterday, in my case when I'm recording, and then the new column is from today. So I can very quickly see that this column has been added, right? Because the timestamp's there. Now, if there's a column that existed but no longer data has been pushed into it, in the case of deleted columns, right? Because we don't really want to delete columns downstream until all the dependencies are removed. But the column may stay there, but we no longer push data into it. The last seen timestamp will show that. It will show the last time we saw data in that column was a number of days ago. And then we can understand that, okay, that column is no longer being populated. I should take some action to decommission or remove it from my models downstream. So this is a really quick way and a simple way for you to detect this. Now, all this information schema is accessible, as you can see, from the Upsolver console, but also from our SDK and from a CLI. So it's very easy for you to automate any kind of monitoring or downstream actions that you can take when those things are changing. So very quick, just wanted to kind of show you how you detect schema changes. There's no need for complex lineages or monitoring tools or things like that. It's all built into the product. As data flows, we detect these changes, we populate the information schema, and you can take action, programmatic action on it very, very quickly. So that's really the power of active observability and being able to detect and take action in stream and avoid any further downstream problems with those changes. So that's it. Thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.